This is the Focus St. Louis Leadership Podcast, and we are at the MAC downtown. And our guest today is Amy Shaw, President and CEO of Nine PBS. The last time I saw Amy was, I want to say maybe early summer when, the antique show came to town. Yeah. And it was fantastic. It blew my mind to see all these individuals that I've seen on TV just come to life. Yeah. And I think you had shared at that time that it was the largest audience that showed up. And it was a really great way just to show up St. Louis and people in St. Louis and also around St. Louis. I think we met a family that drove in from like Arkansas. There was another one that drove in from Tennessee, from all over the place. In any essence, I am looking forward to diving into this conversation with Amy. So, Amy, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so good to see you. Yes. I feel like I don't see you as much as I used to.
I know.
Our little worlds are so busy. I miss
exactly.
you too.
We need to find more time.
I know.
But glad to have you join us. Amy has a fascinating story, and for those who are listening who don't know the story of Amy, can you share a little bit about your journey?
Sure.
And how you got to Nine PBS.
Yeah, how we got to now. I'm always thinking about how we got to now. Like, what's the path that people get, to this moment? Because I feel like you meet somebody and you're like, oh, they're all grown up. So I'm from St. Louis originally, moved away for graduate school, met my husband. We stayed away for about 15 years.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, moved back in 2003 purposely to work at 9 PBS, then KETC Channel 9, my childhood PBS station. Mm-hmm. And really excited to be there. Was there from 2003 in progressively more responsible positions. I oversaw education, community engagement, content ultimately. And then in 2019, I was the Senior Vice President and Chief Content Officer. Ostensibly, I was the number 2 person. And in April of 2019, our CEO died very suddenly, very unexpectedly. Yeah. And it was really a traumatic experience for everyone.
I can only imagine.
And our staff, and it was just really a tumultuous time. So that day that he died, I was named interim CEO, was interim CEO for 9 months, which was a really cataclysmic time. We were landing planes figuratively in the air every day, trying to figure out how to move things forward. And then the board did a national search, and I'm glad they did. I vied for the position and became CEO officially in February of 2020.
Wow.
Which,
before the pandemic.
We'd been through so much in 2019. And I remember at one point we were talking among staff saying, we're going to look back next year and we're going to say we hurdled so much and we came through so much. And then 2020 came.
Happened. And didn't at that time, I think I remember you had either slipped a disc or broke your leg, but you were still showing up.
Yeah, I say that it was my nervous breakdown, but it just didn't happen nervously. It happened as a physical manifestation. I had been traveling on business in Washington, D.C. and tripped, just walking, like nothing amazing. I was just walking and I tripped over a threshold and landed in such a way that I broke my shoulder in 8 places.
Oh my goodness.
Giant breaks. And the way that it would heal was just being strapped to your body for 8 weeks and not moving, which was really hard because I was a new CEO and I was already kind of tired and beat up from that prior 9 months. And it was something. And so when COVID came, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like this is, no. And our team really showed up. But I do remember as we sent people home to work from home for COVID, I was still fully strapped in. Mm-hmm. The only silver lining from that is that with COVID, I actually could go to physical therapy on a regular basis. Because I think, in our lives, we're so busy and we go to so many things. I think if it had been normal times, I probably would have not done that.
It would have taken twice as long for you to heal.
Yeah, and I'm 100%. I'm great.
Wow.
All good. But yeah, so taking over as CEO at that time was pretty remarkable. And I also think taking over from someone who left very big shoes to fill. Mm-hmm. I'm the first woman to be the CEO of 9 PBS, which I think says, it's less about me and more about just sort of this culture that we had. And so my main focus when I vied for the position, and I really felt kind of like Solomon about it, like, listen, if I'm not the right person for this job, and somebody else can love this place more and really take care of our people, then they should hire that person. And I was very clear about the three things that I thought was important. And one was financial sustainability. We were not particularly financially secure. The second was our people. We wanted to be a great place to work, filled with a joyous journey of doing hard work, but doing it in a way that people felt great about it. And then the third piece was community relevance. And really, I think of those things as a triangle. It's not like one took precedence. It was, you had to have all three of those to be successful. And now, a little over 5 years later, officially, we are financially secure.
Congrats.
We're a great place to work. And that's not me saying that. That's data saying that. And I'm honored that we were just named for the 5th year in a row a best place for women to work in St. Louis. But I think we're a great place for all people to work.
Yes.
And we're really doing work, I think, that's growing in relevance, and we're growing as an organization at a time where it's a bit counterintuitive to be growing. Like we should be compressing in this time, but we're actually growing and expanding and doing more, and that's only going to accelerate. So it's kind of this, I don't know, I feel so optimistic about everything in a time where the world is in such a nutty place and it's really hard to be optimistic. I feel great about our position.
So you mentioned briefly, as you walked us through your journey, you mentioned joy. Every time I see you, regardless of whatever it is you're going through, there's a joyfulness about you.
Thanks. I feel the same about you. You're always joyful
thank
too.
Thank you. Yes. Where does that come from, and how are you able to maintain that joyful emotion?
It's such an interesting question. We were redoing our strategic plan a couple of years ago, and we were looking at our core values. And we had done a whole exercise with our senior team about values and really knowing who you were. And that set the course for me to say, I think we're programmed to think that our work life should be miserable and that we should complain about it, and you should work with people who are kind of miserable. I think that's just how it is. And maybe that's Gen X, I don't know. But joy really is such a key piece of the work that we do, that yes, we do hard work, but also we should find great privilege and joy in being able to do it. So at the time we were doing our strategic plan, we were looking at joy as a core value. And some of our board members said, that's a little soft. That might not be. We did work the word joy into community.
Right.
But I think joy is, as the leader of the organization, I think if people can't see me feeling great joy in this work, I think that trickles down to everybody. And we're in the early stages of a building renovation. I keep telling the architects that I know it's going to be hard, and it's, you have to figure all this stuff out, but it should be a joyful journey.
Right.
And I think as the number 2 person in the organization, you're designed to look for problems and risk and kind of be the canary in a coal mine. And I think as the top person, you're designed to look at things more optimistically, because if you can't, I think it's like hard to get out of bed. And so I think that joyfulness has really pervaded the work that we do and our staff and my life. And also, I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet. So what's there not to be joyful about? Like, the things that we have to surmount on a daily basis are surmountable, so we should really approach it with joy. And I feel lucky to do this work.
I can see you doing that. And, when I think of Amy Shaw, the word resilience comes to mind.
Thanks.
Because you've had some, I would say, significant health challenges, and how you've weathered those significant health challenges, if I may, cancer, has been nothing short of amazing and inspiring.
Thanks.
In terms of how you keep on going.
Thanks.
Can we talk a little bit about that in terms of?
Sure. I feel really lucky to be in St. Louis on all fronts. I'm bullish on St. Louis, but I also think if you're sick, St. Louis is a great place to be. I've had 2 rounds of breast cancer. I feel really lucky to have had extraordinary medical care, insurance, great insurance, a great team, a great board, like the most amazing husband also. We don't have children, so it's been, just the 2 of us, and how we came through that really together has been such a a binding experience. And on the very day, you know, I was so busy after my second diagnosis, and the second diagnosis was, you know, worse than the first. And I would say the first was kind of garden variety. I went through the stuff and was fine. And then the second one was more serious, and it was in both breasts. And so the only real option was double mastectomy, which sounds like, you know, okay, we're going to do it. So we did it. I'm laying in the hospital bed ready to go into surgery, and I hadn't really allowed myself the opportunity to sort of grieve or realize what was happening because there were so many other things happening. And running a company and really trying to make sure everything was going to be okay. And I kind of teared up a little bit and said, you know, I'm really sad about this. Like, I still don't believe this is really happening. And he said, well, my husband's by my bedside, and of course he's teared up about it because he's, you know, being strong. And he said, well, here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do. We have a 3-step plan. And I said, well, what's the 3-step plan? And he said, well, step 1 is we're going to do the hard thing, the surgery. Step 2 is we're going to get better. And step 3 is we're going to live happily ever after. Which I thought was the best thing. And that really has become a metaphor for everything, professionally, personally, and I think professionally especially, because these last couple of months have been very bumpy. And so this idea that things are going to get better, you know, the last 5 years have really been something. My mother died. She was 96, and she had
an amazing life.
Great life, right? You've been through this. It's amazing life. My sister died of a terminal cancer diagnosis that she, again, lucky to be in St. Louis. But it was like this chipping away of all of the anchors of my life.
Hold you up,
right? And then you have a decision to make of, okay, wow, now I'm the real adult, which I still, don't you feel like you're 20 sometimes?
Oh, forever 20.
Like, how am I, I'm 58 now. And I feel like, how am I the adult?
Yes.
But I think this.
But you have that vibrant mindset.
Well, you know, but I think like everybody's gone through this where you realize, wow, I'm the adult. So I think this idea of everything is surmountable and we're going to live happily ever after is such a pervasive thought in all of our work. And I feel grateful, all of it. I think all of those experiences just lead us to now.
Yes.
And I'm grateful to be healthy. And everybody thinks the short hair is cancer. It's not. It's always been, you know me. It's always been short.
Exactly. Yes. At one point, I even cut my hair that way. You did. And then I was like, okay, it's a little different. You can't maintain that.
I liked the short hair. I liked the short hair. But
yeah.
So I feel really, really lucky. And again, I've got the best possible world with all the best supports of such a great team that we've grown and cultivated and curated, and a great board and a great community, and like what more could you want?
Wow, that's inspiring. So thank you for being candid. Thanks. And you know, you are a courageous Amy in my book.
Listen, so many people have been through it and been through so much worse. Again, I feel very, very fortunate.
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Great to hear. So what does public media mean to you? Because you talked a little bit about the bumpiness.
Yeah.
And, you know, bumpy is kind of the order of the day.
Everybody's in bumpy land. Yeah. So we've been convening a group of nonprofit leaders at 9 PBS to come together. And it came about early as threats to funding across the boards, the Department of Education, and all these funds that go to social service agencies being stripped away kind of unceremoniously. And so all these organizations in St. Louis and across the country trying to figure out what's next and how they serve the community so dutifully with such a vast reduction of resources. And we wanted to get people together to understand that. And also, how could these organizations cleave together and fill gaps together? So how do we not tear each other apart from within? How do we get together?
Yeah.
I always think of it like the Who's in Whoville. You know, the Grinch has stolen everything, and how do we join hands and still sing and do the work that we're going to do?
That's a great analogy.
So we've been doing that, but actually prior to the first time we convened that group, and it's an elastic group of people, the tornado hit. And so I feel like St. Louis was already in a storm and has been in a storm for a long time. And then another storm hit, the tornado, that has really knocked us off our axis. So everybody's in a change mode right now. Everybody's in a state of a bit of chaos, trying to figure out this new reality. And in the midst of that, public broadcasting since the election and since the inauguration has been really in the fight for federal funding. So as we talk today, in July of 2025, Congress voted on the rescissions package, which essentially stripped public broadcasting of all of its funding. And I think people thought that public broadcasting was getting a lot of funding. So for us in St. Louis, it's 13% of our annual budget.
Oh.
It equates nationally to 1/100th of 1%, or equated to 1/100th of 1% of the federal budget. So demonstrably, it will do nothing for the federal debt.
Yes.
And it was 2-year advance funded. So the rescissions package stripped $1.1 billion, which sounds like a lot of money, $535 million annually to public broadcasting across the country. That money would flow through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and down to stations based on a very complex formula. So the more we raise locally, the more we would get in federal dollars. So 13% of our revenue of about a $16 million budget was federal dollars, $1.8 million, and all that's gone.
Wow.
And so we've been fighting the good fight at the national level, but it's gone. And so the Corporation for Public Broadcasting is closing effectively September 30th because their reason for existence no longer exists. Their job.
They were the pass-through.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it was designed that way so that federally there was no editorial influence from Congress to public broadcasters across the country. So these funds go to NPR and PBS stations around the country. So
in the absence of kind of a central organizing,
yeah, it's a
company,
big change.
What,
it's a big
what
change.
happens, and how are PBS stations moving forward? Are they independent stations then?
No, the good news is, so we're all still licensed through the FCC as nonprofit educational broadcasters. So those mandates are still there. We are a PBS station in St. Louis. We're right next door to St. Louis Public Radio, also independently licensed, currently through the University of Missouri St. Louis. They're an NPR affiliate. We still have those affiliations. We are still doing all the same things that we were doing. So what it means is we're going to have to figure out new ways and new systems. So what happens in the absence of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting? Good question. We're figuring all of that out as we go. I have the distinction of sitting, and I don't know how this happened, but at this moment, I chair 2 national boards for public media that are both pretty influential in thinking about how things are working at the national level. And then I'm also on the National PBS board, which is an elected official. There are 2 of us in St. Louis out of a 27-member board.
Wow.
Half the board is made up of people like me who run stations, half very influential figures. The other person from St. Louis is Maxine Clark,
yes,
who's emeritus on our board at 9 PBS. And so we're figuring all of this out. And I think St. Louis actually plays a pretty important role because we, many years ago, started on this path of community engagement. And how do we understand what's important to the community and then tell stories related to that?
Right.
So had we not been on that path, I think we would have been in a much more vulnerable position. But we've been able to resource the organization in a way that we're more sustainable. And so go back to 5 years ago when we were not as sustainable. We've also been, I keep telling people, we've been preparing for a tidal wave for 5 years because when I took over on the eve of COVID and we were looking at, disaster, we thought we were going to have to lay off a bunch of staff and that we would be really financially insecure. That didn't happen, partly because I think decisions we made during that time.
Right.
But we've been preparing for this. So as we were heading into this budget cycle, FY26, which started for us on July 1, we planned for the loss of $1.8 million. We just assumed it was going to go away. And from now on, we will always, even if it comes back, we will never rely on it again. We were able to move some dollars around internally. We are not laying off staff. We're actually still growing. We have done the kinds of things to be financially sustainable. And that's been a group effort, team, board, community. We've also been really well supported by the community. And I think as this crisis has occurred to the loss of federal funding, our community has really stepped up and said, we find value in you. We find value in you for the national programs, the local programs, the ability to tell St. Louis stories. We just did a town hall on the tornado that brought together activists and community leaders in a way that they had not been together physically.
Yes.
it's a first step. We need to build on that and do more. But how do we do more of that? So in St. Louis, we're in good shape. That is to say, we still need the community's support.
How so? Well, besides funding.
Besides funding, I think it's telling people about the work that we do and understanding the value. And so what public media means to me, when we do this with our staff, like your value in 5 words. And so for me, public media is, this place grew me. It grew me as a child, watching Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood and the Electric Company and Wishbone. And, St. Louis created the Letter People, which is kind of akin to Sesame Street. It was this influential program on literacy. This place grew me as a child. This place grew me as an adult, watching high-quality national programs, the local stories about St. Louis. And then as a professional, this place really has nurtured me. Not only as public media, but St. Louis has loved and nurtured me to where I am now. Like being part of Focus St. Louis, and I just met with somebody this week and said, have you done Leadership St. Louis? You should really do Leadership St. Louis. Like that's really a game changer.
Yeah.
So public media to me is a place where people can gather and we can talk about hard things. We can also show joyful and glorious things that are happening in St. Louis, but we can also hold up a mirror and say, these are the things we need to work on. And we can educate children. That's such a huge piece of our growth because childcare is so challenging.
Yes,
you know all about this.
Yes.
Education is really in a very challenged position post-pandemic, but now especially. We get to fill some gaps, bring people together, which I think of bringing people together as both an act and as an outcome. How do you get people to talk about the hard things? And the key piece is through local content creation, how do you then activate the larger St. Louis region to then tell their 2 friends? So that's what people need to do, is tell their 2 friends what they've heard, what they saw, what they learned, so that truth wins out.
Right.
And that people feel some sense of agency to be involved in the challenges and the opportunities of this region.
Wow. That is fantastic, and I actually believe that it is doable.
I do too.
Yes.
I do too.
Yeah. So you've broken ground as the first woman to lead 9 PBS. What would you say are some of the leadership lessons that you've learned along the way that you can share with our audience members?
Oh my gosh, so many leadership lessons. I think the first, you mentioned the broken shoulder. I was personally so disappointed at that point in my life because I was tired. And you start this new job and you think like it's going to be, I'm ready. I'm so excited. And I was already so tired. And I think that was also kind of a good start actually, because that vulnerability and telling people I'm not at my best, I'm going to need a lot of help. I couldn't draw. It was really a challenging time. And so really opening yourself up in a way. So being vulnerable, asking for help. Like genetically, I'm predisposed to not ask for help. My people are like, we don't need help.
Right.
So I think, and as leaders, I think there's this misperception that somehow you're supposed to have it all figured out. And it's the we.
Right.
Making hard decisions sooner. Right after I took over, it became, and I had been studying this as I was interim, but it became very apparent that our development function wasn't working and we were going to have to make some big changes, which meant personnel changes. And that was painful, but it also allowed room for people to be elevated from this position to up to this position. And maybe if they weren't even quite ready, but are you ever ready? I don't think you're ever ready.
You just dive in.
You got to do it. And so making hard decisions more quickly, not worrying about what people think of you that's a hard thing because you do, I think we act in the best interest of the organization and we're trying to do our best and then it gets misconstrued and it can be very hard. Transparency, we've been so transparent with our team about what was happening with our finances, both during COVID and in this time when we were losing federal funding. And so the headlines now for public media, a lot of public broadcasters are laying off people. It's a really tough time, and we keep instructing our staff to listen. That's happening. We've been preparing for this crisis. Do great work. We're going to take care of you. You take care of us, we'll take care of you. And I think that's the other thing is take care of people. At the end of the day, we're all humans doing this work. And so we've prioritized decisions that really take care of our people, which I think has created the kind of climate and work that creates better work and creates more resources. And so it becomes the self-fulfilling thing. I don't have a great work-life balance, so I'm not going to, because, we don't have kids. And so we both can be very focused on our careers. And because I think as the CEO, that's kind of
what we do.
That's what you do.
Right.
And because these are times that things will never happen at convenient moments. And so just to be ready at all costs and to really be transparent and communicative, always be telling the story of what we're doing, how we're doing it. Those have been the things that I think have been anchors for me as we've done this work. And I think it's helped us be successful and also happy in doing the work.
Going back to joy.
Joy, yeah. Our senior team is really a special group. I could weep openly about my feelings for them, because they're everybody's a front row person, leaned in. How do we get the job done? How do we make it better? Which also has its downsides, because we kind of tear ourselves into knots. Not a lot of women, and I think women, we tend to be very introspective about these things, and
it can lead to burnout. So one's got to be careful.
Completely. And like you probably, you're sleepy, you put your head on the pillow, and then you replay
the day.
Yeah. So I think it's also like how to get rid of those things and be kinder to yourself in the process. But we have such an extraordinary group of people that I also feel so supported and lucky. And I think that's the answer too, is it's, again, as CEO, you're told like it's your thing.
Right.
It's we.
It's we.
It's we.
It's collaboration
Yeah.
At work. So I'm curious, who out there inspires you today?
Oh my gosh. There are so many great people in St. Louis, and I don't think this gets enough attention. We hear a lot about the things that don't work, and I'm in awe of so many people in St. Louis. So, and this is hard because you'll leave people out. Like I love what you're doing at Focus. Focus has been such an important part of my life. Which is why I'm still supportive and involved. And we have a staffer in Leadership St. Louis this year.
Yes,
She's really excited. I think I'm such a huge fan of Kristen Sorth.
Oh, yes. St. Louis County Library.
Yes,
also an alum. She's two-time alum. Yes.
And I'm such a fan of Jody Sowell at the Historical Society. I'm a big fan of all the work that's happening around the tornado and how communities have risen up and come together as you would have expected and immediately. Too many leaders to name. I'm so impressed of people who are stepping up and seeing things that need to be done and looking optimistically at our region.
Right.
And I'm always looking for inspiration, whether it's a podcast or whether it's in-person events, which I thought your leadership conference this year was such a great.
Thank you.
I thought a shot in the arm for people at a time where we all needed. And it's also like a homecoming of sorts. That cocktail gathering I recommend for everybody, by the way.
Yes.
Because it is a homecoming. And it's you realize that it's humans doing this work. And we say this all the time. There's no savior coming for St. Louis. It's all of us.
It's us, yes.
And we've got to do it together. And so there's a lot of people who are digging in and quietly making all of this work. And I'm hopeful and optimistic.
Wow. I love that. So time has just raced right by. So I'm bumping on my final question here in terms of what is your vision for St. Louis and beyond? Yeah,
so our mission at 9 PBS is about how we can engage and activate the 2.8 million people that are in this region. And I really think regionally. When we say St. Louis, I mean the region. How we can engage and activate people to be really engaged and involved in solving the problems that we have and taking advantage of the opportunities that we have. And it's all about our region flourishing. So my vision for St. Louis is that we get out of our own way.
Yes, indeed.
We put egos aside, that we actually establish a unifying vision for our region that everybody can be laser pointed to. Now, the pathway may be different for everybody, but that we're supportive of each other in that vision and that everybody's moving towards it. My greatest joy would be to read nothing but headlines in national press and in local press about the renaissance and the resiliency and the turnabout of the St. Louis region. And I think we have it in us.
We do.
But we have some decisions to make to do that. But that is that everybody in St. Louis is doing well. I know it's kumbaya, but that, economic equity, racial equity, gender equity, like how do we get everybody doing well in St. Louis? Because if that's the case, we're all going to do well. St. Louis will flourish and thrive if those things happen. And I think that's what we should all be striving for.
And we are definitely on our way to doing that. Wow. That is all the time we have for our
pleasure.
show. I want to thank you, Amy, for joining me today on the Leadership Podcast of Focus St. Louis, and just for your vision with 9 PBS. And now we've heard your vision for St. Louis and beyond.
Thanks.
And it is truly a pleasure.
Thanks.
Thank you again.
As we like to say at 9 PBS, we wanted to walk with swagger. I wanted to help people understand that St. Louis in the public media system is a really big deal. And so we always would say, we're a really big deal. And I would like St. Louis to do that, to walk in and say, like, we're a really big deal. We're not. We cannot be apologetic for any of that. So we're a really big deal.
We don't have to.
We do not.
And I think that's a great banner. We're a really big deal.
Yeah.
T-shirt forthcoming.
That's right.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Yes.